You go. Audio at 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. We just played an excerpt from Joe Sohm's Vision of America. It was a keynote speaker promo video, and it was recorded in HD, and it's just beautiful. I'm actually going to play the video. So if you listen to the interview on YouTube, you can see the video that I'm referencing, and we play it throughout this show. Okay, this is what's so great about that, Richard, what we just heard, the 10 minutes. And how are you doing, Dr. D?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about today's show.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited. This is one of those guests that test my inner, like they put you to a test, not personally. Joe didn't call me and say, you better be really, really, really good. But he's such an honor to have him on, and he's such a prestigious guest. I hope he's not turning red right now, but such a great guest that it makes me and you, I'm sure, the same way, just rise to meet the challenge of having such a great guest on. He's so interesting. Absolutely. He's so accomplished. And I pinch myself that we get to do this every day. Okay, so that 10-minute, I'm going to clarify, it's a nonpartisan speaker's film.
Correct.
Is narrated, you probably recognize the voice, by Clint Eastwood and William Shatner.
Yeah.
Astronaut William Shatner.
Astronaut, yes. You can actually say that now. Yes.
Yeah. And it features original music by Grammy-winning, Oscar-nominated Roger Kellaway. Oscar, Emmy, Grammy. He's got an EGOT, right? That's an EGOT, right? All three of those?
I believe it is. Yes,
Emmy,
sir.
Grammy.
He's got a Grammy, Oscar nominated, no Emmy.
So we're missing one.
Yeah, the Bergmans had them all. The big three.
As Don Adams would say, he missed it by that much.
Hey, it's not over. So Oscar, Emmy, Grammy-winning lyricist Alan and Marilyn Bergman, famous Alan and Marilyn Bergman. Vocals by Grammy-winning Judith Hill, and closing song by Ed and Gaia Tossing. If you haven't figured it out yet, our special guest today is Joe Sohm, America's photo historian. He's our special guest today.
Wow.
All right, Joe, excuse me. Now we're friends. I get to call him Joe. You don't.
Mr. Sohm.
Mr. Sohm is to you. He sent me, his wife wrote a nice intro at one of his, he speaks all over the country. And I liked this piece, this question. I can't take credit for it, but it inspired my intro here. How many of you have ever dreamed of getting in your car to drive across America and visit all 50 states?
Oh, wow.
I know I have, and I've visited a lot of them, but not all 50. But I've thought about it as an adult to go back and do that.
But there's one that's going to be a tough one to drive to. I can tell you that right now. But
Alaska?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Yeah,
you can still drive to Alaska.
Drive on a ferry,
as long as Canada and the U.S. stay friends.
So maybe you wanted to travel America's back roads and take photographs along the way. Well, if you've ever dreamed of doing that, then you are in luck. On today's show, you're going to experience highlights from Joe's 30-year American journey through his camera lens. Okay. The American open road, the smell of asphalt in the warm afternoon sun, the smell of gasoline. To me, there's nothing more intoxicating.
You know what line is running through my head right now, don't you? I won't say it, but you know what it is.
Oh God, Dr. D, this is a family show. Get your mind.
Now, I was going to say, I love the smell of napalm.
I thought you were going to say something else.
No.
Okay.
I'll keep it family. Continue, please.
The hot air blowing from the engine block through your open window.
Oh, wow.
Your companion on the leather seat beside you, a bag of sunflower seeds. Your orange Gatorade perspires in your cup holder. Your music is loud. The sun is high. You're on a road trip. There is nowhere to be and nowhere that I would rather be than on a road trip. So I started thinking about our first road trip show was way back. I had to look in season 4 in 2019. That broadcast, if you recall, Dr. D, was called Road Trip and the Dreaming Tree. And in that episode, I chronicled my thoughts and my observations. I think you get a perspective on the road that you get nowhere else. When you're alone and you just got the open highway in front of you and the music and the air. These observations were gleaned from my road trip from Santa Barbara, California through Northern California, then speeding through beautiful Oregon in less than 4 hours. Kids, don't try that at home. And arriving at my final destination, which was the Gorge in George Washington to see the Dave Matthews Band. I fell in love and I camped along the Columbia River in the dirt for a 3-day Labor Day concert. And we chronicled all that in the radio show. Well, the girl and the love is long gone. The music has faded. I've washed off the dirt, but the road is still vivid in my mind map. That was episode 177, if you'd like to go back. And I followed that up with more road trip broadcasts, season 6, episode 258, Christmas road trip in LA. And then we did another Labor Day weekend in the next year in episode 318. I suppose that being on the road and in love with the road was at first a distinctly American-born phenomenon. From the covered wagons that blazed trails west to the very first Ford and the subsequent roads that sprouted out ahead of its path like thousands of river tributaries, I know that being on the road is also a Higgins thing.
Oh, is it?
It is. I suppose, and I'm Higgins, Jeremiah Higgins.
Yes.
In case you forgot who your host was. I suppose that it's in my blood, as it was my father's. We spent most of my childhood traveling across America looking for the perfect home to grow up in. We went through California, lived in California, Montana, Oregon, Washington, Arkansas, and Idaho. These are just some of the states that we lived in, and the states that we crisscrossed to get there are too many to list here. My strongest memories are of the gas stations along the way, every few hundred miles, offering cold popsicles, sodas, ice cream, road food, and the small hotels with floral comforters from 1960 and neon signs that always were missing a working letter or two.
Oh yeah, I love those.
But the big prize though was finding that motel with free HBO and air conditioning. We always celebrated when we found one of those. It's been a while since we've taken the radio show on a road trip, but that all changes today. We're taking our most ambitious road trip yet with Joseph Sohm, America's photo historian. Destination, you ask?
Yes.
America.
Ooh.
All right, I'm going to intro Joe real quick here, and we're going to let him come in and
Regale us with story.
oh yes, I can't wait. Who do you think of, Dr. D, when you think of a painter that captured early America so perfectly?
Norman Rockwell.
Yep. For me, it was also Norman Rockwell.
Yeah.
And we talked about the National Geographic yesterday, who our special guest today actually took photos for.
Oh.
So the National Geographic was one of my first loves, right, as a kid, looking at the photos. And the same with Norman Rockwell. He sparked my imagination as well. I would stare at his paintings for hours, studying every brushstroke, every color. When you think of a photographer who also so perfectly captures America, the people, the places, the joy, the pain, jubilation, and what it means in those faces to be an American, what do you think of Joseph Sohm? Wow. Joe has a love for America, an understatement if there ever was one. He's referred to with certain awe as America's photo historian, and that he is indeed. Joe has photographed over 50 states spanning 3 decades. His images have been published internationally more than 1 million times in his career, 50,000 times a year, in all major print media, TV, internet, and motion pictures. I saw a photo that Joe sent me of the cover of a John Grisham novel. His images, and I'll have to ask you, it's a picture of the Capitol, I believe. His images have been published in publications such as National Geographic, Time Magazine, the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, ABC's The View, and in films like Night of the Museum. His work is featured in President Clinton's book, My Life and in his presidential library, as well as Frederick J. Ryan's portrait of Ronald Reagan, the Great Communicator. Also in Al Gore's Oscar-winning film, An Inconvenient Truth, and in NBC's Embassies. He has presented his work with the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C., the Boston Pops, Philly Pops, New West Symphony, and the Kansas City Symphony Orchestra. He has given talks to over 100 venues across America. I'd love to pull it up and show you this. He showed me, he gave me his long resume. It just scrolls and scrolls of all the places he's given great talks. In his speaking appearances, Joe explores what he has gleaned during his travels and how he has fallen in love with America. I can't think.
Sorry, apologize. Your car is overheating.
Should we start over?
Yes.
I'm going to pick it up with in his speaking appearance. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
In his speaking appearances, Joe explores what he has gleaned during his travels and how he has fallen in love with America. I can't think of a better time to fall in love with America all over again. Can you?
Mm-mm.
Welcome, Joe.
Well, as Robin Williams would say, good morning, America.
Yeah, we forgot to wake Joe up because my intro was so long. He just decided.
Well, what was beautiful about that intro was it brought back memories of my very first solo road trip. In 1993, I had a ticket to go to the National Association of Broadcasters convention held in Las Vegas. And I took Highway 93 up over the dam and into Nevada. And those images came flooding. I actually had a room, I think at the Motel 6 way off the strip.
Do you have HBO?
You know what? I think I was too tired, but I got what you were talking about in terms of your experiences, Joe. I got to tell you, I think this is fabulous. Although I'm still trying to figure out from Jeremiah, how did you go to more than 50 states? That's what I want to know, because we only have 50 of them right
He
now.
didn't say all of them were a road trip.
I see. I got you. It's great to have you with us on this road trip.
Yeah, when you were talking about one of the surprises, separate of my own photographs that I've taken, was realizing that my father, before I was born, was actually doing the exact same thing that I was with my mother and my brother. And they drove from where I grew up in St. Louis, near the origins of Route 66. And before the interstate highway system, they actually drove across the country in 1937 and 1938.
Wow.
And they went over that dam that you were referring to, Hoover Dam, and on the year that it was completed. That's how I could figure out when he took his films. But those journeys must have gotten into my DNA, because 10 years later I was born, and I have later found, without ever seeing these films with my father, that I went to many of the same spots and took many of the same pictures decades later.
Oh, incredible! Have you ever put them side by side?
I did. In some of these videos that I show, simply say by father and son, Joe Sohm and Joe Sohm. So I'm the
Amazing.
third. And there were 3 Joe Sohms that we know of so far.
Well, Joe's journey to photograph America began with a camera, an RV, and a credit card. And Joe, I think that I love how that starts out, that idea that brings so much to my mind here. But you tell us, if you wouldn't mind, how that 3-decade road trip began, because you were a history teacher. And then what? You hung all that up for the call of the road, or?
I've had in my lifetime, I've had 3 primary careers. One, the most fun and probably the least profitable, was as a bass player and a musician. So I bought my first house in St. Louis, actually in the center, the population center of America, Jefferson County, Missouri. And I went from playing music to going to the University of Missouri and getting a degree in American history. And those two endeavors, music and history, didn't exactly have a financial element to them. So consequently, I came up with the third one, which was photography, which became a more profitable business concept. And so later in my life, early in my 30s, I decided I wanted to integrate all my primary interests in one project that would never be completed and never would end, that I could keep going to the well for this information. And that was taking American history, music, and photography and mixing it into one multimedia expression. So that's mostly what I've done. The photography, as I said, paid the bills. And I fortunately benefited from what's known as stock photography, which was big in the late 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, before the internet kind of disrupted it. But the way that worked is I went on the road wherever I wanted. I took whatever photographs I wanted. I brought them back. I edited them. I captioned them, and I submitted them to my agents, mostly in New York, ultimately in Seattle, in Chicago, in London, in Israel, in Munich, in Tokyo. And these images that were taken and submitted to them were then licensed to publishers like National Geographic, Time, Newsweek, which you mentioned, or textbooks, or on television shows. So consequently, for example, the book you were referring to, the John Grisham book, was one of many happy accidents of me flying someplace, being on an airplane, being seated next to a stranger, and then pulling out their book. And the book was John Grisham's book.
You're sitting next to John Grisham, huh?
Yeah, and then looking at it, and I'm going, "Hey, that looks like my picture," you know. And I said, "Can I borrow your book for a second?" And then there was in small type the credit for my picture. So I've had that happen many times, including recently, where people will open up a double-page spread in a magazine, and there's my photograph. So
I hope that you're getting checks from those. You just didn't notice where they're coming from.
I do continue to, fortunately, earn royalties from these images. In fact, the most recent one I got, I'm with this agency now called Shutterstock, and I saw a rather large license sale, and I was kind of curious. I mean, being published 50,000 times a year, I don't really track every one of them down as to what happened. But if you see a larger one, you want to know what it is and why it's sold. And so I looked at it, and lo and behold, it was the property my wife and I bought in Colorado, with in Ridgeway, Telluride, in that area of Colorado. And it was basically an image that made the San Juan Mountains look like the Himalayas. And it was shot literally on our property with our gate in the bottom part of the view, and the mountains in the top part. So it was good to see that our property was selling.
It must be such a trip to stumble across one of your photographs out there in the culture and the pop culture and being used. Let me ask you, we've got to take a break right now, but a couple of minutes here, if you could answer this in a couple of minutes. If you can't, we'll come back on the other side. In the beginning there, I talked about what I love about the road. What are some of the things that you love?
Well, I love getting lost because I do it so well.
That's a good answer.
I like that.
I like to do things I excel at. And, I did the bulk of this journey to capture the America that I found without GPS and without a cell phone, and without really just a paper map, and that was about it. And so frequently, if there was a division in the road, go right, left, center, it seemed like I always went down the wrong one, but down that wrong road, if it wasn't a dog barking at me or an electric fence electrifying me, it yielded some interesting imagery. And I kind of figured if they didn't want me to go down the road, what were they hiding? What was something that I could photograph? And I found that often. Other times I got the barking dog.
I'm glad you didn't get the electric fence too often.
Yeah.
Our special guest today is Joe Sohm. He is America's photo historian. He's the author of Visions of America, Photographing Democracy, with a foreword by Paul Theroux. You can go to his website right now, visionsofamerica.com. While we take this quick break, and we will be right back. But before, Dr. D, you hit that cut button.
Okay.
Let me tell you about the live show that this is airing Thursday. This Thursday tonight at 6:30 p.m. at the Ventura County Museum, hosted by noted journalist Ivor Davis, is Joe Sohm, America's photo historian. It's going to be Ivor Davis up close and personal with Joe. Joe joins host Ivor for a discussion of his work as one of the nation's preeminent political photographers. Joe's award-winning photographs have been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, National Geographic, Time Magazine, as well as news outlets such as MSNBC, CNN, ABC, and PBS. This discussion will offer the guest opportunity to hear the insights of two journalists who have covered some of the most pivotal political moments in the last 50 years. Quick facts here. Fun facts. Doors open at 6 p.m. In-person members fees the in-person members may attend for free. Non-members, $10. Non-members Zoom, it's also on Zoom, it's $5. Check this out.
Cool.
You're gonna, yeah. Ivor is an incredible journalist, and I can't wait to hear his time with you, the two of you. Okay, we'll be right back.
All right, we're clear.
Let me
So
see.
I can take a bathroom break.
If you want to, yes. Go right ahead.
I'll be right back. Okay.
Oh, there we go. We're just tightening some things up here. Suffering succotash. Let's see here. Okay. I even have a question, or I've got some questions for you, Senator.
Don't have time for that
All right, let me put this over
until we
here.
get through mine.
All right, here we go. Okay, we're all set. Joe?
Back. Hold on.
There we go. Okay,
Okay.
you're all set?
I'm set where
Yep.
you are.
3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show. Our very special guest today is Joe Sohm, America's photo historian. He's the author of Visions of America, Photographing Democracy, with a foreword by Paul Theroux. Check out his website, visionsofamerica.com. Also, Joe sent me a bunch of just amazing photographs, some of his favorite photographs. We're going to create a little photo album on Facebook with
nice.
Joe's photos. So
Yeah.
go to my Facebook page, Jeremiah Higgins, and you can, or to the Jeremiah Show, and you can check out some of those photos. What are you doing on tonight, Thursday, November 3rd already?
I'm going to Ventura.
You're going to Ventura, Dr. D. You're going to see Ivor Davis up close and personal
That's
with
right.
Joe. So should be a fascinating interview. All right, so back to our time together here, Joe. Let me get. Okay, so here's one of your. You're so quotable, and I love this. The open road. I think this is your quote from one of your speeches I was listening to. The open road is what freedom feels like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I also wrote it so that Clint Eastwood could read a variation of that. But yeah, I think just about anybody, when you get behind the steering wheel and you've turned off your cell phone and you just turn off your GPS and start driving, I mean, that does feel like what my idea of freedom is. And I suspect most of your viewers and listeners would agree.
This is such a question that I have a feeling it's more complex for you, and your answer is more complex than the question. It's such an easy question, but why do you love America, Joe, so much? How did you fall in love with it as a kid versus as a young adult? And then later, as you started this project, this never-ending project, as you say, of photographing the people and the experiences that made up your vision of America, your view of America.
Well, I think I've always been interested in, quote, knowing what my purpose is. So we're all born on this planet and we all feel like we have a certain destiny or purpose. And I felt that to understand my purpose, that it's like looking at the breadcrumbs of Hansel and Gretel on the trail, and you find this crumb and this crumb. And here are some of the crumbs. I grew up literally on Route 66. My high school, Webster Groves High School in St. Louis, Missouri, was thought to be the most typical high school in America. And CBS television did a feature documentary called 16 in Webster Groves, of which ironically I was in one of the scenes in the haircut scene because I had a Beatle haircut. Well, we see that didn't go that well. Then I bought my first house, and I found out it was the population center of the United States. Then I became an American history teacher and learned more about the foundings of the United States. And it was then that I kind of intellectually woke up to realize that the
we've lost your
was possibly. Whoops.
Your audio is breaking up a little bit there.
Okay, what if I got closer?
No,
That's good.
there you go. Yeah, go ahead and continue.
Okay, so I felt that America was the earth-shattering paradigm shift of the second millennium, and that it was a worthy event to try to retell that story. But there are plenty of people that do tell that story. There are plenty of writers and plenty of TV shows. So I thought maybe I best could integrate my passion for America, my passion for music, which was quite developed because I'd been playing professionally from 18 to 28, and my passion for imaging, all into one endeavor that I called Visions of America. And it started to solidify in 1987, which was the bicentennial of the United States Constitution. And they created a commission in Philadelphia. They gave me an official sanctioning that, as did the state of California. And also, I was asked to produce some major multimedia shows involving music, American history, and imagery for Merrill Lynch that toured the United States. Did you lose the sound again, or?
No.
Okay, so
No, you sound great.
So anyway, it's an emerging project. It's an emerging vision, and it's like a well that I can keep going back to because there's always a new book. Like John Meacham just published a brand new book on Abraham Lincoln and democracy, kind of an irrelevant theme. And I'll probably be looking at that and probably drawing more inspiration. I mean, all the books that are behind me, I've actually read them all. And from them, I come up with ideas of what I'd like to see and what I'd like to photograph. And if I photograph it, then I can then in turn share it with others via my agents through stock photography and be, hopefully financially rewarded. Although money has never been my driving force, it's always been my reward for, I guess, quote, doing good by trying to tell the American story in imagery.
When you look at America right now, and a lot of the rhetoric, or a lot of the some things that have turned into violence are they claim, and it's because they love America. Different, and without getting political, that's not this kind of show. But can you love America as we do, as you do, as others do, without the violence, without that extreme passion? What's your thought on that?
Well, clearly the United States is politically kind of in a mess at the moment, and it's not the first time we've been there. I mean, obviously there's other periods, and politically we've always been, at each other's throat per se. The goal though is to, keep it verbally and not physically violent, which it's trending towards. But I feel the discussion is being conducted by a lot of people on television, in books and articles, on the internet. And I'm not necessarily feeling the need to throw my voice into that dispute and argument. And my hope is to give ample evidence in my pictures that democracy does work, and it works well enough that the most dominant nation in the world has emerged over 250 years. And
yeah, I would imagine your photos, there are photos that have you had experience where you found someone that's just all wound up or isn't sure how to express themselves, and they can express themselves through your photo, or your photo conveys the feelings that they're feeling?
Well, I've had the opportunity of photographing every president or person of the opposite party that pursued the presidency, from Jimmy Carter through the 2020 election. So I was present for more than I can count presidential campaign events for Donald Trump, for Joe Biden, for Bill Clinton, for George W. Bush, for Dick Cheney, for Ronald Reagan, etc. So, and in all of these, I feel like I let the people do the talking, because they are.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to lens it, if that's a verb, and to put into the camera what I'm experiencing. It's difficult when I'm shooting. Honestly, my right brain and my left brain kind of separate when I'm doing this, because my thoughts about America, etc., are kind of really put to the back burner, because I'm either following President Obama or Trump or Biden with a camera, and I'm jockeying for position amongst hundreds, if not 1,000 photographers. They're all trying to do the same thing. So consequently, I'm not really thinking about even what they're saying. I'll listen to that later. I just want to get a great image of the person and in the moment in our history.
Great. Well, before we go to break here, one last question for you. Why do you feel that America is such a perfect subject for being photographed?
Well, visually, it's stunning. I mean, the landscapes rival any place in the world. There are other gorgeous landscapes in places, but when I show up with a camera, easily, it used to be 60% of the people there at exactly the same location at Monument Valley or Chaco Canyon or places, Niagara Falls or wherever. They were either Germans or English. Now, 75% of the people there are Chinese. And furthermore, they used to show up with an iPhone, but before with that, you know, like a small Insta camera of some kind. But now there are literally, I mean, I did a full moon rise over the Lincoln Monument, the US Capitol, and the Washington Monument, where the full moon went from left to right across. It's a once in a year opportunity. And I had to squeeze in there with 50, 70 other photographers. And of the 50 to 70 photographers, not only were the bulk of them Chinese, but the bulk of them were Chinese women with multi-$1,000 camera setups. I mean, in a lot of respects, they had cameras as good as mine, in a few respects, better than mine. And I was going, gee whiz, these people have traveled from all the way around the world to come to the exact spots that I go to. So I think the proof is in the pudding that the United States visually is stunning. The skylines, the people are certainly fascinating. The activities, you know, there's just so much to shoot here. All you have to do is walk out your back door.
Joe Sohm, America's photo historian. He's our special guest today. He's the author of Visions of America, Photographing Democracy. It's got a foreword by Paul Theroux. The website is visionsofamerica.com. It's transforming to visionsofdemocracy.com, but either one will work. I don't know if Visions of Democracy works right now, but Visions of America certainly does. And tonight at 6:30, you want to be in Ventura. If you can't make it to Ventura, don't worry, you can watch the interview on Zoom. Ivor Davis, our good friend Ivor Davis, up close and personal with Joe Sohm. Joe and Ivor, both amazing journalists over decades, have a great discussion of Joe's work as one of the nation's preeminent political photographers. Ivor Davis is a good friend of the show and just a great guy. Let me just tell you a little bit about him. Go to ivordavisbooks.com, best-selling author and journalist for many, many, many years. Ivor has written widely on movies, murder, and medicine for the London Daily Express, the Times of London, the New York Times Syndicate, and the Los Angeles Magazine for over 5 decades. He's got his previous books include Five to Die, the book that helped convict Manson, plus the widely acclaimed The Beatles and Me on Tour, his personal account of the 1964 Beatles North American tour. He was the only Daily News reporter to accompany the Beatles from start to finish. So check out ivordavisbooks.com. He's a great interviewer, great host. And get down to Ventura tonight at the Museum of Ventura County. We'll be right back.
Excellent. Excellent.
Cool, cool, cool.
Tilt your
Okay.
camera. Tilt your camera.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm
up,
blind.
Well, you keep. Yeah, I just
better?
don't want your head to be cut off.
You
Yeah.
talking to me?
No, he's
I'm
talking to me.
Jeremiah.
I'm the one that always causes all the trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll tell you when we're talking to you, Joe.
Talking to you.
Yeah, I'm talking to you now. Okay. Now I'm going to talk to Jeremiah. It's about time to start here in 3. Which
Hold
needs,
on 1 second. Hold on.
we're at 47,
I can't talk.
52 past. So we have one more break to take.
Okay.
So however you want
try to
to.
get all my rest as
Okay.
quick as possible.
Very good.
And you really have a good one?
Oh
Or-
yeah.
Okay, can we wait till then so I can get through
Absolutely.
my
Absolutely.
roll?
And if we don't get to it, it's okay too.
Okay.
It's not a big deal.
All right, let's do it.
All right, Joe, here we go. Jeremiah in 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back to the Jeremiah Show with Joe Sohm, America's photo historian. It's been a really fascinating conversation. Joe, I wanted to ask you, if you didn't possess your gift of sight, what are some of your favorite smells that describe America? And I bring this question up because you mentioned it in the speech, and I love some of your answers. What are some of the smells that, if you had to describe America, that come to mind?
Ironically,
Never been asked that question before, have you?
ironically, you've asked a question that I can barely answer because my
Oh, no.
my senses of sight and sound are very enhanced, I'd like to think, but my sense of smell is completely delinquent. So I don't know what America smells like, but I know what it's. I know what it's. You could do a lot with that one.
Yeah.
I do know what it sounds like, and so that's one of the things that fascinates me about America is what it sounds like when I'm sleeping in my RV and I wake up in the morning and I hear the sound of birds, and I hear the sound of jackhammers and I hear the sound of construction people building things and creating things, and I hear the sound of hot cars, revving up their engine and stuff. So sounds are very revealing. In fact, separate of this, I went to Kenya, Africa, 2 years in a row. And the memorable thing from going to Africa was not as much the wild animals, which were stunning, but was the sound of Africa. So that I heard. In terms of the smells, I might leave that up to somebody else answer.
Well, and something that you sent me, one of the films or something that I watched, you mentioned apples, like out of an apple orchard driving through, or I think I threw in the smell of a muscle car because I was behind one a few months back, and
Yeah, muscle cars I can smell.
and then that gasoline, that old that smell, I've missed it since my teens. How does the act of the photographing that relationship, maybe spoken or unspoken, between you and your camera and your subject spark real conversations throughout these travels? And why do you think that is?
Well, honestly, I don't talk too much with the people around me while I'm shooting for one primary reason. Over the last 5 to 8 years, my shooting technology, how I do this, has evolved significantly, first from film to digital, but now from shooting stills to shooting 4K time lapse, slow motion video, flying drones, which I've managed to crash and lose. I've crashed.
Don't let Joe get your drone.
I've crashed in the Mississippi River, never to be seen before again. I've crashed in the Pacific Ocean, never to be seen again. I've crashed in the oil fields outside of Bakersfield against power lines that took me 24 hours to find the drone. So
It's like, sorry to interrupt you, but I got to jump in right. James Cameron and you should team up in your next project and find those drones.
Yeah, well, I did find my drone, but it was, again, if you've been in Bakersfield in August, it's a little hot.
A little bit.
And it was about 112 degrees, and it crashed on Friday. And then Saturday morning, I realized, although the battery was dead on the drone, it was not the drone that was telling me that I could find it. It was the controller. So the separate device that I control the drone, this battery was still good, and it had a written GPS record of where that drone was. So I drove 100 miles back to Bakersfield the next day. I spent 3 hours looking in 200 oil wells with thorn bushes at their base for my drone. And it would be a little red blinking dot, and you would follow that dot, but you never know, like with the dot, whether you're going this way or going like this. No, it's more like a guy with a divining rod looking for water. And so consequently, I thought I located it, and I had a picture of the horrible incident, the wire hitting the wire, a spark, and the drone just fell. Well, finally, 115 degrees, honest, not exaggerating, I gave up. And as I was leaving, out of the corner of my eye, I looked up, and it was another oil well that looked identical, but I matched it to the picture, going from 3 dimensions to 2. And I looked down in another thorn bush, and there was my drone kind of hanging there like this. I picked it up, and it was able to fly once I recharged it, and it got another $650 repair made to it.
Joe,
but I got it back.
He does not give up, and
No.
that just tells me that was one very expensive drone.
Yeah.
Well, and to end that story, that's one of the reasons over the last 5 to 6 years, I don't interact with other people, because there's too much going on.
Yeah.
Like if you're flying a drone, I cannot talk to anybody.
So we can't follow you and do an interview while you're flying your drone, is what you're saying.
No,
So I got noted. So I would be so mad at myself if I went home and I didn't ask you the question. Clint Eastwood, William Shatner, this film is just beautiful. I can't wait to find it and watch the whole thing. Beautiful writing from you, your life story, and Clint Eastwood narrates and Shatner narrates. How did that collaboration come together?
well, like most of us that grew up with Star Trek, all of us were, drawn to Mr. Shatner's voice at the beginning of Star Trek. And so I've actually worked with him 3 times now. The first time in 1975, I produced a multimedia show about space travel. And of course, I needed William Shatner. So everybody in St. Louis, he was a big deal when I was living in St. Louis. I mean, I live in Ojai now, so it's not as big around here. But anyway, I got his phone number. I called him up. I offered him an amount of money. He agreed, and he recorded it. So years went by, and on the 10th anniversary of the Apollo moonwalk, I was asked to produce a large multimedia show for 7 days, paralleling Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's flight to the moon. So for that, I commissioned a guy to write a symphony of man's dream of flight. So I needed a narrator, so I called up William Shatner. It was sort of like I only had one celebrity, but I would save him for when I needed him. So I called him up and did that. So another decade goes by, and then it was the bicentennial of the Constitution. And now I had, as they say, OTP, other people, or OPT, other people's money, OPM, other people's money. And I hired Mr. Shatner again to narrate a piece, including the preamble of the Constitution and the beginnings of the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. So those pieces were done and recorded in really good recording studios in Burbank. Then Clint Eastwood was, he's quite the jazz devotee.
Yeah.
And his favorite pianist is my good friend, Roger Kellaway, who lives 3 miles away from me. And Roger is the Grammy winning, he's won awards in France. He's one of the most phenomenal jazz pianists really in the world. And he's played on countless albums, Wes Montgomery to Van Morrison. He was Tony Bennett's music director. He played with Joni Mitchell. He's played with some of the legendary jazz greats. So Roger, I commissioned to compose the music. And then at a later point, he said, well, do you want song lyrics? And I said, of course. And I said, who'd you have in mind? And his idea was my idea, the greatest songwriters in America, Alan and Marilyn Bergman. So fortunately, they were busy people, as they always are, but they were so seduced by the imagery in my book that they, in essence, illustrated the pictures in my book and my collection with the lyrics. And as Alan Bergman told me, he said, most people that hire us to write song lyrics, we only write one song, like The Way We Were, or The Windmills of Your Mind, or the theme for Tootsie. He said, your show is different, Joe. He said, we wrote 5 songs for you.
Wow.
So those 5 songs have been recorded. And then they suggested, as did Roger, well, don't you want a narrator? And I said, sure. And they said, well, who do you have in mind? And they said, well, we think, I said, I think Robert Redford would be the voice tone that I would want for this. And Marilyn Bergman looked at me and said, well, we could call Bob, but we don't think he'd be good for this project. And I go, bummer. Why is that, Marilyn? You know, and they said, well, he's a good friend of ours, but we think he's too associated with liberal causes, and only more liberal than Bob is us. So we think if you got somebody like Clint Eastwood, you could keep Visions of America non-political, and you would have people from the Republicans and the Democrats and say, well, we may not agree on our politics,
Right.
but we certainly agree on the importance of these visions of America. So consequently, Roger called up Clint, and to my amazement, 1 week before our live premiere with the Philly Pops for 17,000 people at Kimmel Center with a live orchestra, Clint Eastwood called me up and said, well, I read your script. And he said, I liked it. And he said, why don't you come up to Carmel and I'll record it. So he recorded it 5 days in advance of the concerts. We were actually in rehearsals in Philadelphia with a full orchestra. I decided it was more important for me to be in Carmel with Clint. So we recorded him. He did the whole thing in about 3 hours. And the recordings came out fantastic. And I set that to the music, to the songs, and voila, that's how we have Clint doing the narration.
And we played that throughout this entire interview. So at this point, everybody's heard quite a bit of that. And it's just wonderful. It's just really great. Well, Joe, you're one of those guests and one of those people in life that spark interest. And I wrote way too many questions to ever get to you unless you spent 3 days with me like you did with Clint. So I'll just have to pass the torch here to Ivor tonight, and I'm sure he's got amazing questions for you.
He'll take over.
He'll take over, and he'll show us young whippersnappers how it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, really great time with you. I hope you enjoyed as much as we did. Final question, real quick, if you have an answer for it. This is going to be a hard one, I'm sure. If you had to pick one photo that defined your life, Joe, which one would it be of your photos?
One photo that
Do
defined
you have one that's like that you're like?
I have, I think, a favorite photograph, which was taken between Telluride and Ridgeway, Colorado, which is the southwest corner of Colorado and possibly the prettiest location in the state of Colorado, which is saying a lot. And I found this location that had the perfect western cowboy mountains dotted with white snow, a blue sky, white puffy clouds, and all the autumn colors, yellows, oranges, reds, browns, intermixed with cows and cattle, as they say in Colorado, all at the base of it. And all of this is in one image. And I can send that image to you for reference if you like.
Yeah, let's put that in your album on Facebook so everybody can
I took that picture, and it did change my life in that it turned out to be the Double RL Ranch, which stands for Ralph and Ricky Lauren. It's Ralph Lauren Ranch, thus the logo here. And that image ended up being so strong that my wife asked me, why didn't you take me to see that spot? So I took her to see that spot. And unlike Colorado, where you have to have a Subaru, I had a Prius, and I drove the Prius into a ditch.
Did you find your drone?
I did not find my drone. I was pulled out of the spot by a tow by a neighbor, and I asked him, I said, well, this spot is so gorgeous. Is there any property to buy here? And he said, yeah, the property where you're standing. And so it was for sale. We ended up buying the property, and we now have a house in this location, and it's called Aspen View Ranch. So that image actually changed my and our life.
And they gave you the Ralph Lauren polo sweater. Yeah, there to go. You got the uniform. Came with the property. Oh, that's awesome. I love that story. All right, Joe Sohm, America's photo historian. He's the author of Visions of America, Photographing Democracy. Pick up a copy right away. It's got a foreword by Paul Theroux. His website is visionsofamerica.com. You can find out all you want to find out about Joe there, and then look at his wonderful, wonderful photos and series. And you can also find that on Facebook here. On my page, Joe sent me some personal photographs that he's taken, and we're sharing those. It's been such a great hour with you again tonight, 6:30 in Ventura, the museum, Ventura County Museum, 6:30 tonight, November 3rd, hosted by noted journalist Ivor Davis. It's Ivor Davis up close and personal with Joe Sohm. Joe Sohm joins host Ivor for a discussion of his work as one of the nation's preeminent political photographers. You're going to enjoy the rest of the conversation and see how a real expert does it with Ivor Davis. Joe, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thanks. It was a pleasure being with you.
The pleasure is ours. Thank you.
All right, we're clear.
Okay. Joe, can we get a real quick radio drop from you?
A quick what?
A radio drop, basically just saying your name, and you can say the name of your book if you like, or your website, and then and you're listening to the Jeremiah Show.
Do I say that part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically a drop we'll put in future shows
Oh, I see. Got
to
it.
promote, sell more books or whatever, send people to your website.
Got it.
So you say your name, whatever you want to promote, and then you're listening to the Jeremiah Show. And then
Okay.
you go.
And I'll count you down in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, afternoon, evening. This is Joe Sohm. I'm on the Jeremiah Show, and it's my pleasure to be discussing my tabletop book, Visions of America, which you can see details about at www.visionsofamerica.com. It's great to be here.
And then just
Perfect.
tag it out with, and you're listening to the Jeremiah Show.
Okay, tell me when.
3, 2, 1.
And you're listening to the Jeremiah Show.
Excellent.
He actually did that at the top too.
He did indeed. May I ask you, I won't put this, this doesn't have to be a part of the recording, but I was just curious.
You can leave it on the YouTube here.
All right.
Yep.
Which do you prefer? Analog or digital photography?
Oh, by far digital.
Okay.
There's no question. It's just has analog photography has like a dark and a light range of this much. Digital is like this.
Yeah.
And photography is all about light. And you get a lot of shadows, deep shadows in film and stuff. And in digital, it does kind of make it look a little fake, because something that should have been dark and should have been light, you can bring out so much that it doesn't look like, honestly, digital is better than my eyesight. I mean, I see things in these digital images that I never saw before.
Well, I've been in the broadcast business for over 40 years. And of course, I've gone through the evolution. And I took a black and white photography class in college. I've been through that evolution as well. And I would agree with you. However, I would also say I miss the hands-on processing
That's
of,
true.
of both the audio with the reel-to-reel and a splicing block and a razor blade, China marker, and splicing tape, as I miss the container to develop the film, and then to put the negative into the enlarger and process it, print on the paper and all that stuff. There's just nothing like that tactile, creative aspect to it that I just love. But I would agree with you. Yes, digital is certainly superior.
Well, I mean, the advantage of what you said and what I know is that we've had an opportunity to be in both worlds.
Yeah.
And clearly, I'm not blowing off film by any means. I'm just talking about what I'm doing now is these time lapses. They're not one photograph. They're 1,000 still photographs that are 130 megabytes a piece.
Yeah.
1,000 times 130. So the for 12 seconds. And 12 seconds, every one of those single images has been processed individually. And so when it runs, it doesn't look like real life. It looks like a fantasy life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can do the same with the Milky Way. Like over 8 hours, the Milky Way will just move across the sky. And you couldn't never do that in film.
No, you couldn't. Hey, this has just been a joy. I thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure too. So you guys are gone. A fist bump.
And come back anytime you want to show something, Joe.
That's right.
Love to have you back. Okay. Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.